Welcome to Institute for Creation Research's movie review of Jurassic World Rebirth. I am actually here with Dr. Brian Thomas, and we're going to do a review. We just went and saw the movie, Jurassic World Rebirth. I loved it. I didn't get popcorn and candy and Coke, mostly because it was 9:30 in the morning, and I didn't want you to judge me, is what it was. But we just saw the movie, and we wanted to come back and give a review of the movie, and then maybe talk a little bit about the dinosaurs, how accurate they were, and what can Christians do with this movie, and if they want to evangelize, if they want to reach out to people. So really glad that you're here.
You too. And who are you?
Oh, I am Dave Napier. I am part of the events team here at ICR, and I do a little bit of speaking every now and then. But,
wait, are you Dino Dave?
Well,
no wonder you went to the Jurassic World movie with me.
I do.
You just can't get enough of them dinos.
That's right. I do have the nickname of Dino Dave. So,
or is that because you hang out at
are you saying
homes?
It's because I'm that old?
You like
is that what you're
like
saying?
to do nursing home ministry. Yeah.
No, they call me Dino Dave because I do love dinosaurs so much. So that's the good news. I love talking about them. I love watching movies about them. I love teaching everybody about dinosaurs, and that's how I got the nickname Dino Dave.
Well, I've seen you in action, and you do a great job. So
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'll give you the $5 later. But so just real quick, for anybody who doesn't really know what Jurassic World Rebirth is about, we'll give a quick synopsis.
Okay.
I'll try it, and then you can, correct me if I'm wrong. But as I recall, the movie is really about a company coming together and saying, hey, we think we can take the DNA from these huge dinosaurs that used to live, that now still live on an island, and we can use it to research how we can help people with heart disease, how it's actually a good thing. The movie starts out as a good thing. We want to help people have longevity of life, to help with heart disease, things like this. If we can get the DNA from these dinosaurs, we can do these things. And so they then go and hire mercenaries, and they bring in scientists and all this kind of stuff to be able to go do that. And they pick 3 of the biggest dinosaurs, and I'm going to forget one of them. It's Mosasaur, Titanosaurus, and then, what's the third one? Do you remember?
Quetzalcoatlus, but
yes,
of the 3, only one of them is actually a dinosaur.
I mean, that's true, yeah.
And the paleontologist person, who plays the role of the quote-unquote scientist, he even says the 3 dinosaurs are this, that, and the other. I'm like, no scientist would say that.
So really you have a dinosaur, you have a swimming reptile, and a flying reptile.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they were supposedly the biggest ones, and they felt like because they had a bigger heart, that they could use research to actually help humans. And so that's why they go out to this island, and that's where, of course, just like in every other movie, it all goes downhill, right? Yeah. So let's talk about the movie itself for a little bit. How do you, as far as the production value and the acting and all that good stuff, how do you rate the movie?
Well, it's not the worst movie I've ever seen. Although
okay,
it's right down there.
It's down there. Yeah. Okay. Bottom 3.
Bottom 3. Yeah. The scenes were pretty contrived, and I found it hard to invest in the characters.
Yeah. It really wasn't building to a climax.
Correct.
In a sense.
Yeah,
you're
it was
right.
just one scene after another of
yeah.
So as you can tell, I'm not a big fan of the show.
Now, I as a former theater major in college, I feel like I'm going to say this. I think that they did a disservice in the beginning, and hopefully you'll stay with me while I say this. In most movies that you have action, you have somebody who's really smart or really
they have a
good
particular
at beating
skill.
People up. Yeah, good particular skill. Thank you. That first scene is all about just establishing that.
Yeah.
They are really good at X. They are really good at Y. They didn't do that with this one. Now, the problem became with Scarlett Johansson. I love her as an actress. I mean, she does great in the Avengers movies. But I think that they thought, well, she's Black Widow. Everybody knows that she can beat everybody up. But that she didn't act like Black Widow. And so now you have a character that was mismatched with what she was supposed to be. She's supposed to be a special operations, warrior. And she didn't act like that. And it bothered me the whole time.
Yeah.
And they really didn't establish her and then the relationships with the other mercenaries that were supposed to have known each other and cared about one another. And so you didn't have any chemistry. It was just so awkward and weird. And then it didn't do any service to the actual writing of the script. If you've got good chemistry, you've got good characters. Now, good actors, let me say this before somebody beats me up in the comments. Good characters, good acting, but because they didn't establish it correctly, it really just didn't come off the right way, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the cool part is we got a lot of dinosaurs, and they were awesome. So really cool. The mosasaur, I really like the Spinosaurus. That was one of my favorites. And having those scenes with the dinosaurs interacting with people, the CGI is getting so good, and how the dinosaurs move and interact with their environment.
And how they eat people. It's really,
well, I mean, yeah, that's
getting really good at that as well.
They've always been good at that for some reason, but...
Spoiler alert, people might be in danger. It's like... Haven't these characters seen the other movies? Don't they know not to go down there?
Exactly. Yeah, well, that's what the money's for, right? So, yeah. And we talked a little bit about the scene where there's a T-Rex in the water.
Yeah. And
kind of seeing that T-Rex looks like he's swimming now. And I thought that was really cool. You don't see, I don't think we've ever seen T-Rex, especially in Jurassic Park movies, actually swim. You would think, I mean, if they live around water, they're going to get in the water. They're going to swim and stuff. Yeah.
Sure. I think it looks cool.
Yeah.
Too.
And I think I mentioned before, I love the Spinosaurus. Watching those Spinosaurus swim through the ocean as they're circling boats and stuff like that. I really enjoyed that kind of stuff. That was really cool.
Eye candy for Dino Dave.
It was. I was very excited. I'm not going to lie to you. However, that brings me to the next question, really, is talking about scientifically, did they take creative license when they created these things? I know I'll bring up like Dilophosaurus, the one with the little frill and spits the poison or whatever it is, we don't really know that it did that. There's no evidence in the fossil record that it had that frill and that it spit stuff. Was there anything else in the movie where you felt like they took creative license?
Yeah, all the dinosaurs were, supersized, and many of them were genetically engineered, so they were kind of like monster. It's more like a monster movie at this point.
Yeah, it really was, and I think it was a little bit of a divergence from where they originally started, where it was all about just T-Rex and, Stegosaurus and Triceratops. And now they're getting into this realm. And as they watch the movie, they'll see that it's really, there's a lab off on another island where they're starting to mix and hybridize and all this kind of stuff. In the other movies, there was Indominus Rex, where they were mixing the genes and putting in
superpowers, basically.
Scuttlefish, it could camouflage and block its heat signature and stuff like that. And they've continued that down to where now you've got the D-Rex and Mutandon or something like that. It was a cross between a velociraptor and a pterosaur or something like that. So you're really getting these mutations and these mutants in there. And so they are taking a lot of creative license. The mosasaur we talked about was even smaller. Really, in real life, what we've found in the fossil record is actually much smaller than what they're portraying, right?
Right. So everything's, most of the critters are bigger, but
right.
But the genetically engineered ones it's just total fancy. The whole premise that you could clone a dinosaur is just it's shaky from the get-go.
Right.
Yeah, and then to add to that, we can tailor these things, and we can craft them, and we can, like you said, mutate them, and just try different. Let's try giving this wings, and so now this movie actually has flying velociraptors, which is.
We always have this concept of, we're going to mix the genes, we're going to make something better. We think, I can make this better, I can do this. But what usually winds up happening is not that it makes it better. I think
Well, when we're talking about biology,
right?
Now, if you're talking about computers, yeah, we could make them better.
Sure,
we
right.
could make, we could make air travel better, and
right.
so that's what innovation is all about. But it turns out that when you adjust, when you try to tinker with what God has created, which is biology, then you adjust it and tinker with it, and all you ever end up doing is messing it up.
Right.
Because it turns out that he optimized, creatures in the beginning. It reminds me of like the Star Trek characters where they're trying to have humanoids, and they have the wrinkled foreheads and everything. And it's interesting and creative, but there's nothing as good as the real thing.
Right. How can we actually use this if we're a Christian and we want to reach out to our friends and family and things like that? How can we actually use that to reach out to people? Can we bring them to the movie? Are there subjects that we could use that might lend itself to kind of sharing the gospel with them?
Well, sure. I mean, that's a good idea, isn't it? To leverage that which is in our popular culture. In this case, of course, the movie presents dinosaurs as having gone extinct tens of millions of years ago, but having lived for many millions of years. And it doesn't just present that; it states those as facts yet again. So we hear that again and again. How do dinosaurs fit in the Bible? Like, what do you say for audiences whenever you do that talk?
Well, I think there's a word that they're using for some kind of big, called big scary beast, and that's tanin. And so I think that word is in there. Now it's translated in different ways. It can be a serpent, it can be monster, and we can go through verses of that. I do that in my talks. But I think the biggest thing and the coolest thing is in Job when God talks about behemoth. And he doesn't just say, hey, I made a beast or I made a animal like this. He said, consider behemoth. In other words, everybody knew about this animal. Everybody did. In fact, he describes that it can walk into a raging river and not be bothered, that it has a tail that sways like a cedar tree. There's not an animal alive today that we can say can fit that bill, can walk into a raging river, has a tail, sways like a cedar tree. There is none. And yet he says, this is a prime example of my handiwork. And I tell people in Texas, we call that the biggest, baddest thing on the planet.
Yeah.
And the coolest part is when we really look at the evidence of dinosaurs, if that's the biggest, baddest thing on the planet, we should expect to see where people drew sauropod dinosaurs and carved them, because that's the only thing that really matches. Big, huge tail, walks into a raging river. It's a sauropod dinosaur, like the Titanosaurus we see in the movie. And that's exactly what we see. We see sauropod dinosaurs carved and drawn more than just about any other dinosaur. And I think it's excellent evidence that we don't have to fit dinosaurs in the Bible. Dinosaurs are in the Bible. We just have to look for them,
Right. So I would say, I agree with you. And I would say God created them originally, and they were originally very good, didn't eat meat, nor did anything, but that didn't last long at all. And then, so formed and then fallen when in the fall because of sin. And so there was no death. So there were no eons of the age of reptile where they're eating each other. That actually happened after sin and after the curse of death, which went on. Cursed is the ground for your sake. So now things die, people die, and that is the last enemy that Jesus has come to conquer. And he proved that he can and will by raising from the dead, conquering death. So that's the setup for the whole narrative of this life that we get to play a small role in during our lives. God has this giant narrative, and he's going to be the hero of the plot. So this one actually has a plot. This story, the real story of life.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So then, but then they're in the pre-flood world for 1656 years from creation to the flood, and it's during that time. I mean that the dinosaurs are living, and so many sea creatures that went extinct as well. in the flood. So because the flood happened, that's why we even have fossils, which reminds me, there's a scene in the movie where the scientist character, they were talking about, oh, if I die this way, that would be a horrible way to go. And then he says, well, I want to die.
Yeah, I want to be die in a shallow sea and buried with silt.
Because that's the best chance you have of turning into a fossil.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then what I think is going to happen is most viewers don't think critically, and they're not going to think through that critically, and they're going to go, oh yeah, because I've been hearing my whole life from the scientists that these animals lived and died in a shallow sea, and then they turned into fossils, because that's what happens all the time, right?
It's so easy,
and it's
right?
like, hang on. Do we have shallow seas? Yeah, somewhere on Earth? Sure. Do we have silt? Sure. Do you have fossils forming in those places? Not one.
Right.
Not one. That's not how you get a fossil. You have to have a flood. You have to bury these creatures suddenly and really deep. And then I think you have to dry them out pretty soon. And the flood narrative in the Bible gives us that recipe, an outline of it anyways, saying that all the high hills under the whole heavens were covered. Those are the high hills of the pre-flood world, which is very different. And I think it was just one continent back then. And so during the flood, the whole continents are moving apart. You got all new seafloors being made, and then water covers the land. And no wonder we have these broad, flat-lying rock layers. It's not because there's an ancient shallow sea for eons. It's because there was an ancient flood that covered the earth recently. And so you don't need a lot of time to make these rock layers. You just need a lot of water. The Bible says there was a lot of water. So anyway, formed, fallen, flooded, and then faded. We could talk about faded. They fade from memory as they go extinct after the flood. But they hadn't yet completely faded from memory when God called, like you say, Job's attention to the behemoth. Look now at the behemoth, which I made alongside you, i.e. on day 6 of creation week, I made the land animals and then you people. And calling to this creature's characteristics that God placed in this creature, and saying, because I can do that, you can trust me. If I can do something good with something terrible, especially when it gets to Leviathan, then you can trust me to take care of even the hard parts of life. I have a plan for it, and I'll carry you through it. Anyway, I think that's the message of Job. But like you said, we see this dinosaur alive, after the flood. It's even in the Bible. I have a friend who actually came to Christ because someone was on the beach, out beach witnessing, and they said to my friend, who was an atheist and raised as an atheist in Europe, he's on a beach in Spain, and there's somebody out there beach witnessing in Spain, and said in Spanish, hey, did you know that there's a dinosaur in the Bible? And my buddy was like, that's stupid. Who cares? But no. Well, we're going to talk about it at a Bible study over at this hut, tonight. And he was by himself. He was like, I'll go see what these Christians have to say. And he listened to them talk about Job, and they read the passage out of Job, and they looked at the features that match what we know from the anatomy of sauropods, like this one here, Diplodocus. It's my choice for Job's behemoth, and we have a lot of characteristics, more than any other animal in the Bible. We have Job 40, starting at verse 15, and it gives all these characteristics. And you can actually look at the fossils of Diplodocus and find so many details that match and align with that description. So, there are dinosaurs in the Bible. I think there really are. So alive after the flood, but then faded as they went extinct, as the ice age ended, the climate changed, their habitats dried up. And as maybe even people contributed to their habitats drying up when you drain the swamps and things like that. And so faded from memory. And then we finally find them as fossils today. The whole premise of Jurassic Park, Jurassic World is the fascination with the possibility of humans, interacting with extinct creatures and being able to see them, face to face.
I think, well, it's interesting you said that because it brought me back to the movie. Because in the beginning of the movie, they're describing a world where dinosaurs have become old hat. Instead of Taco Tuesday, you got T-Rex Tuesday. It's just, they're nothing anymore. At one point, you see one in the city, and they're working with it, and it's an annoyance. If we were to find out about a live dinosaur today, we would flock to that thing. We would love it. And they've created this world now where they're nothing. They're an annoyance now. Let's get rid of them. But we are fascinated with dinosaurs because they're mysterious. We don't know about them. Even as much as we've dug them up, as much as we've learned about them, even when you read the books about them, there's a lot of stuff that they're just assuming. There's a lot of things that are just kind of being said that they don't really know. But they're fascinating to us, and we want to know more. And I think when we go to conferences, when we do talks, and I know you know this, one of the biggest or well-attended talks is dinosaurs, because everybody is so interested in them. They want to know more about them. And so I really do think dinosaurs are a great way to draw people to that conversation. You can draw them from the physical to the spiritual through dinosaurs, because you think about it. And so we can actually draw people, hey, if dinosaurs were real and they lived at the same time as people, and we can show that, that means that whole timeline that evolution has, where the dinosaurs are buried and it's over hundreds of millions of years and billions of years. If we can show that they lived at the same time, that blows that timeline out of the water. And that can actually kind of pique interest in people. They get to learn about dinosaurs, and all of a sudden now they realize, whoa, wait a second. I haven't been told the truth. There's something different now. And I think that can really clue people into researching not only dinosaurs, but then understanding that timeline and saying, wait a second, the Bible has an account of the flood. It has an account or a timeline that is actually lining up better with the fossil record than evolution does. It actually explains the geological column better than evolution does. And that can really draw people in to break the hold that evolution has on them and really start to open their eyes and their heart up to the Lord and really understand that Jesus wasn't just a figure in history, but he is our creator, our savior, and our coming king. And that's the most important thing we can do when talking to people about anything, is drawing them to Jesus.
I love it. Yeah. And he made us, and we rebel against him, and yet he still wants to know us. Yeah. So he does all the work. He reaches out, he chases us down. The Father loves us so much, he gave his only Son, so that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. And it's kind of like, Jurassic World, we mankind have figured out a way to resurrect these extinct creatures and give them everlasting life, so to speak, within that historical timeline. But that's not feasible. It's totally fictional, as we've been talking about. But with God, nothing's impossible with God. He could do anything. He created it all to begin with. He's going to make a new heavens and a new earth, according to this Bible. Everlasting life? Really? So, why not? He made everything from nothing. He can do anything. Yeah. And he's promised that he's going to give everlasting life to those who trust him. But we have to, of course, recognize the fact that our sin is the problem. My sin is the problem that's keeping me from God. And then say, Lord, you're right about that sin. Please save me and rescue me from that. And then get a relationship with God, lasts forever and ever, and then ever again. Just goes on and on. But all that information, who God is, who we are, what the real problem is, where we came from, that's all in the Bible. And I think it's reliable. And I think we could take God's word at face value, at its plain value. And it plainly talks about Behemoth. It plainly talks about the flood. And it plainly talks about me being a sinner. And like you said, the science supports that as well, especially my area of expertise, which is fossil proteins. There's actual proteins that are still in the fossils, and proteins can't. And sometimes those proteins are still organized into tissues, including blood vessels, like blood vessels that they're pulling out of these dinosaur bones, networks, little tiny blood vessels, sometimes with blood cells in them, and there's bone cells in the bones, embedded in the bone. And I just saw some Saturday in the microscope here at the Institute for Creation Research. I'm looking at these bone cells from a Jurassic crocodile, and I'm like, these cells look like they were put here, not that long ago. And so it looks fresh, relatively speaking. The real world fits what the Bible says better than it does what the evolutionary mainstream story tells, and the one that we all hear and all hear repeated. But we're allowed to think for ourselves and follow the evidence where it leads, and it leads to the Bible, which then leads us to Jesus.
Absolutely, very true. Well, so for the movie review, we say D for the movie, A+ for the dinosaurs, though, maybe.
Oh,
you like the dinosaurs?
I'll give them an A for the CGI. Yeah.
Yeah, A for the dinosaurs.
Well, for the CGI, but not the conception of the monsters. That's just right. But the actual dinosaurs, the actual T-Rex, those were A, man. I mean, I had no problem imagining them being right there. It
was very cool. I loved it.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm Dino Dave, so I have to love it.
Right.
But I really enjoyed it. So the dinosaurs are great. As far as scientifically it goes, they took way too much creative license. But, you think about it, it's a creative license because it is a movie. And we want, just like in one of the other Jurassic Parks, when he starts doing the Indominus Rex, they actually say, the guy who's doing all the gene therapy and mixing everything, he says, this is y'all's fault. You wanted bigger and badder and meaner and bloodier. That's your fault. And so, in a sense, Jurassic Park is our fault because we all like the bigger, badder, bloodier, grosser. So it's kind of our fault.
As moviegoers, they're like, what do the people want? Make it as weird and bloody and massive as we possibly can.
Eat two people at the same time. Yeah. So
why have a 10-foot cliff when you can make it a 1,000-foot cliff?
That's right. Exactly. So, and then for the ability to use the movie though to actually reach out to people, I think it's an awesome tool that we actually can use.
That's a good point. And but to have that question on hand and to think through what question could I ask? For this movie, questions like, well, for me, I would ask, do you remember the scene about fossilization? And he wants to be buried and with the setup that would be very likely to fossilize. Have you ever thought about do fossils actually happen that way? And just to get that, and then if people start saying, well, no, I don't think that makes any sense, that opens up a whole door to a new realm of, wait a minute, but all the scientists have been saying it. So if a lot of the scientists, paleo people, are wrong about one thing, what else are they wrong about? So they might be wrong about the timing of these two. And then we can lead a conversation, in a good direction. So, well said. Thanks, Dave.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with me, Dr. Thomas. Really appreciate it. That's about all the time we have for our movie review of Jurassic World Rebirth. If you'd like more information, if you like the information we've talked about, the evidence we've talked about, all the things that Dr. Thomas said, more of his research as a paleobiochemist, be sure to check out our website, icr.org. But you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and get even more information, get more great content like this. And me, being from our events department, if you want to actually get out and be with our scientists, be in God's creation, you can check out our events. Just go to the events tab and you'll see several things there. We're always doing dinosaur digs. We go out to parks across America, to the national parks, and we bring along our PhD scientists to tell you about the dinosaurs you're digging up, about the rock layers and things that you're seeing out in nature. That is a great way to up your level of education, your encouragement and inspiration. That's what we want to do. We want to make sure that you're encouraged, that you can trust God's word, and that you're inspired to live boldly for Jesus. So be sure and check out those things. Check out our events. Check out our YouTube channel. Also, you can check out our Discovery Center here in Dallas, Texas. You can check our website at icr.org. And as always, thanks for joining us.